All right, sorry, I got cut off. My internet's not the greatest here. Neither is my hair. So anyway, what happens is Roosevelt's going to surround himself with a good cabinet that's going to help him make good decisions, and he's going to push through several New Deal programs, first New Deal programs that are designed to get the economy going, to get people back to work. And some examples of that, some examples of his first New Deal programs, which he promised would provide relief, recovery, and reform. The 3 R's: relief, recovery, and reform. And you remember me talking about relief, recovery, reform. Those were his 3 goals, the 3 R's of the New Deal. And he wanted to provide relief and reform laws that favored the rich over the poor, and basically cut away at that laissez-faire concept. Some examples of his New Deal programs were the Securities and Exchange Commission, which was to regulate the stock market, which obviously needed to be, FDIC and the Glass-Steagall Act, which was to provide insurance on your money so that if something happens to the bank, your money's guaranteed up to a certain amount. And I think the first amount that was ever guaranteed was $10,000. Of course, it's more than that today. If you go to your bank, you'll see those letters on the bank door, everywhere in the bank, because that's giving you the assurance that you put your money there, that your money should be there, unless, of course, you take it out. The Agricultural Adjustment Act was passed to help farmers, those struggling on the Great Plains where the Dust Bowl is taking place. Then you have the Civilian Conservation Corps, which is one of Roosevelt's very famous New Deal programs that put young men to work, working different places and planting trees on the Great Plains to the land. The CCC, there's several places that we talked about that you could go that are products of the CCC. If you go to some of these state parks that were built by the CCC, you have Tennessee Valley Authority that was providing electricity to the rural South. You have the Public Works Administration that provided roads and sewers and built schools. So what we're seeing here is we're trying to provide jobs, yes, and get money going here. But we're also trying to provide things that but we still use today: electricity, FDIC, things that we can still have. He's also going to pass the Social Security Act, which gives people over a certain age money, and it's their retirement, which we, still very much part of society now. Franklin Roosevelt also is going to try to pack the court, which is the court packing plan, and where he gets angry at the Supreme Court for not passing some of his New Deals or making his New Deal programs saying they're unconstitutional. So he wants to add Supreme Court judges to the Supreme Court. And, a lot of people, he gets a lot of backlash over that. By the way, one of the things that I do mention, and because I'm not at school with my normal setting, is that Franklin Roosevelt is going to be in a wheelchair. And he is going to, he's diagnosed with polio. And one of the things that he does that makes him so popular is that he is going to provide what are called fireside chats. And that means that he's going to get on the radio, which is, and we talked about this, I think, in the first video, mass media. Mass being a whole group, a whole bunch of people or whatever, and media being the way that you get the news and the word out. And he is going to use the radio every night. He's going to sit down, sort of like I'm sitting down. I can't see you. I'm using this as my media here to talk to you. He uses the radio to talk to the people, to let them know what he's doing, what he's trying to do to help the banks, which he passes bank holidays. That's the big thing that needed to be reopened to make people feel assured, was the banks are going to be reopened, and the banks are going to open now. We have more regulations to make people feel safe with their money. So Roosevelt's going to use the radio a lot, especially in World War II, to get the word out, to get the news to the American people fast. So what happens is these New Deal programs began to go into play here, but then something else happens, and something else is going on in Europe. And that is dictators are taking over in Europe, especially Germany. Italy. And then, of course, Russia's turned communist. So things he gets pulled. Roosevelt begins to get pulled because he his time is going to start being divided. He wins his second reelection in 1936. He wins again in 1940. 36, 40, 1940, and then he wins a fourth term in 1944. Now he's going to die on April 12th, 1945. And so World War II has started by that point, but he's not going to see the end of that. As a matter of fact, the war ends in August of 1945, and we had not even gotten into Germany and at that point. So he never saw the end of that, although he made big decisions with Prime Minister Winston Churchill of Great Britain. So one of the other things that Roosevelt is going to deficit spending, and he is going to do that for job creation for the unemployed. That's the big thing, is people are losing their jobs. And if they don't have jobs, they can't provide for their families, and they can't buy, and they can't pay for things that maybe they had bought on the installment plan. So that was one of the things that we talked about in the 1920s as well, which kind of tied all together, was that people were buying on the installment plan in the 1920s and were making payment plans. And buy now, pay later became very, very popular. Because, you wanted whatever new gadget or new invention was rolling off the assembly line, or the new car. And so if you didn't have the money for it, then you just paid for it on monthly payments. That's something that you and I know about today, but back then had not always been the case with people and how they bought goods. And so, if you look on page 1 of your packet, let me make sure that I'm going back over all this. One of the big economic trends and major causes of the Great Depression, we talked about that, was overproduction and underconsumption. People were just not buying people were buying, but then they began to stop buying as much. And so all this has happened. FDR has, taken over here, and he's pushing through all these New Deal programs. And he is, trying to get people back to work, and people trying to get them to spend money that they do have so that they can put money back into the economy. And that's hard to do. And so, he's trying to assure people that, that we're trying to get out of the Depression here. But then, of course, like I said, World War II is looming. And of course, when World War II breaks out in Europe, we're going to, of course, pass several laws to keep us out of it. Neutrality acts to make sure that we don't sell anything, don't ask for anything. We're not going to sell it to you. We're going to stay isolated, whereas Franklin Roosevelt was not really much of an isolationist. He was an internationalist that believed that we should be involved. And so, we know where this is going. World War II is going to start. And we also know that one of the things that helps get us out of the Depression is the jobs and going back to work in World War II. And so Franklin Roosevelt, once again, dies, and I never see the end. He never sees the end of Depression when the war starts and goods are made. And so I'm going to go back through here and make sure that I have not skipped anything. Something else is going to happen after World War I. Many strikes begin to take place. What was the purpose of these strikes? And one of the things that workers wanted after World War I was the same pay they were getting during World War I. And a lot of companies began to pay workers less because they didn't have to stick with the agreement during World War I to keep workers happy and to pay them what they needed to be paid. So, inflation happens after World War I, so workers are going to be cut wages, and strikers go on strike. And a strike, if you remember, is when workers refuse to work, whether they sit down like they did in General Flint. Refuse to work, or if they walk out. We talked about how bosses would lock employees out if they did go on strike. So That also caused a lot of fear about strikes and labor unions, especially during the 1920s and the whole Red Scare of communism was workers being upset and not happy with the government. And so that's on page 1 of your packet was that what I mean was not in that same war. They were cutting and workers, and they didn't want to go to be cut pay. Continue that. Page 2 of your packet. Deposit interest created. Well, we just you to put your money back in the bank. At the stock market, using the stock to use deposit, taking your money to put it on the stock market. As long as we had a bull market where we had long prices, high stock prices, then it was fine. Nobody ever knew. They didn't lose any money. But once that bull market went down and prices dropped and stocks were not worth as much, then there was not as much money to put back in the bank, and the bank used your money. So you got to have some way to assure depositors that your money is safe. And once again, that is something that we still have today, and it was part of the first New Deal program. All right. So wrapping this up, I went over the 1920s quickly and the